you have to be with the right people. And when I say right people, I don't mean people who are rich, people who have resources, people who are privileged. I just mean to say that people who have an ambition.
Now, like my goal is not, I need money right now. It's how can I build wealth in the future?
When people say my parents are not agreeing to it, I say that probably you are not convinced enough towards your goals. That's why you're not able to convince others.
Like same thing with my initial lease, right? When I told him I was 20 at that time, he was like, okay, like, you know what I mean? How are you going to pay me? Like, do you have clients? I said, no. And I was like, look, this is what I have. I have this social media. I have this, and this.
And it's about putting yourself in that situation, because if your target is $1 million, you would start spending accordingly.
Yeah.
You're like, get me more people. Get me a better space.
You work backwards, right?
Right? And then when you're like, now I have no choice. Hi, Irinder. Welcome to the Launch Lab. I'm really excited today because we'll be talking about something different, a business which is not that conventional. It is about fitness, which is, I think, of real importance these days. Especially, I think, we as a generation of millennials and Gen Z are more aware and exposed, I would say, exposed to fitness than the generation before us or our parents. So I think it is a good start, and we would love to know more about it from you. So how did you get into Perspective Fitness?
Yeah, of course. I run Perspective Fitness Studio with my wife. We both essentially run the business together. And before she was a part of it, I had started my own fitness studio while I was in university. And that was almost out of necessity more than more than, a plan of like, I want to do this. I had initially started, I guess, back in 2017 with just an Instagram page.
Okay.
Right. So I started an Instagram page. Me and my friend actually started Instagram pages. He started some car thing and I started this fitness thing.
Okay.
And the concept was, we'll probably get a couple 100,000 followers. We'll just essentially just grow the page and maybe sell it, right? Or sell ads on it. It had zero like personality behind it. It was just a informative page without my face. Grew that to a couple thousand, I think, at that point, until I introduced myself, when I realized, you know what, why don't I just make this my own page? And at that point, it was just like, okay, cool. People are starting to notice me a little bit. And then I was like, why don't I start to post stuff more consistently? And then also, why don't I start training clients? Because I can make some money off of it. The issue I had was I had followers, but I had no business. There was nobody that wanted to train with me directly because I didn't have my own gym or anything. So I tried to get a job at Good Life Fitness. Didn't work. They didn't want to hire a student at that time.
How old were you? Sorry.
When I started the page, I would have been 18.
Okay.
And then by the time I was trying to find this a job or whatever, I was about 19. And then when I was 20, I got hired by a corporate gym part-time. I was doing okay, making some money, but I was like, why don't I start? I also wanted to record more content. That was my priority. I want to record more content and I want to train clients. So I was like, why don't I start my own space, rented out like the back door, back alley type unit, where it was like hard to find the entrance type of thing.
That's all's happening when you're like 19.
This was right when I turned 20.
Okay.
Yeah, right when I turned 20.
Still pretty young.
Yeah. So I had a couple months after I turned 20, I started the studio. The purpose of that was to record content in there. But I had zero idea about content. I didn't know I needed good cameras or laptops or anything. And I didn't prioritize that investment. I bought some cheap camera and I was like, you know what? This will be fine. The quality was so bad. And then I was like, you know what? Screw content. At that point, I started to slowly give up on content. And that's around the time the algorithm changed on Instagram.
Okay.
So I was posting and I was almost like losing followers every time I posted. Because before that, anytime I posted, it was like a couple hundred followers that I would gain every post, right? At this point, I'm losing 10 followers every time I post. So it was a little discouraging, right? And I didn't push through that. It's like the stock market, it goes down and you got to keep pushing through, right? I just didn't push through. And what happened was I was like, you know what? Let me just focus on my business in person. And I made that switch. And then TikTok came about and all that. I just didn't take social media seriously. And now social media is, back up and popping again like it was. But essentially at that point, I was like, you know what? Let me just take my in-person business seriously. I eventually got fired from that corporate job that corporate gym, the big chain gym. Again, my fault, partially other, circumstances, but I got fired from there, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go all in here. After a few months of going all in there, I decided, hey, you know what, around 2020, I'm gonna add a business partner on board, right?
Okay.
Not going to go so much into that, but that did not go, we were partners for about a year-ish.
Okay.
We were about to open this location now. That's around the time my wife had moved from the UK she was my girlfriend at the time, to here. And then the business partner left, pretty sour ending, right? And we were just moving into this new location. And at that point, like, we were like, okay, we have zero revenue because we just went into another lockdown.
Which year are we now?
This is 2021. So
Okay,
start
so
of
just another
2021.
year. Okay. Yeah. So
Sorry, no, mid 2021 is when we were signing the lease and stuff. That's when she had moved
for the new location.
For the new location.
Okay.
So when we say new locations, we're moving from the old one into the new one. So
The
it's not,
Woodbridge location.
yeah. So it
Which
wasn't
is your current location.
Yeah. So it wasn't a second location. It was just moving into this one,
Okay.
a bigger space.
Okay.
Just across the street from the last one.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, essentially at that point, around the end of 2021, early 2022. No, it was actually for January 2022. There was a lockdown. And that's when we were supposed to open.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
But it was like, okay, you know what? We can't open right now. A blessing and curse in certain ways. Realized that business partnership was going nowhere, so we had to, or they decided they wanted to separate routes. And yeah, that's essentially when me and my wife, or girlfriend, still girlfriend at that time, we decided we're going to go all in with this and we're going to do it together. And now we're here.
This is 2021.
2022 start.
2022 starting. So you've, from 27 to 22, you covered up in 5 minutes. So we'll go through them one by one, because you did mention a lot of important things, I think, which would be essential to our viewers when starting a business, right? So first of all, we come from we are from South Asian families, right? So conventionally, our parents are used to some careers and they kind of would be more happy, I would say. I don't know about yours, but my parents always wanted me to get a professional degree and then get into something which I like, because the idea was to just have a safe job first, land into a job, right? First go to school, then go to university, probably even get a master's, right? So with you mentioned that after you turned 18, you started in 2017 into fitness. So were you also studying in university? And how was that with your parents? Like, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. So 2017, I was just finishing high school at that time. When I started the Instagram page, that was actually, no one even knew that was my page.
Okay.
Some of my friends and people that I knew were following me at that point, just because I don't know how, but they were following me, but they didn't know that was my page.
And what content was that?
It was just fitness content. I was actually reposting. So in the fitness world, there's a lot of stuff that's good and bad, right?
Okay.
So I was just reposting what I thought was good content.
So it was faceless. So
Faceless.
You were not that.
Other people.
Okay.
I was using this repost app, and like 4 to 5 times a day, I would just repost something that was like, I thought that was actual real information that someone could benefit from.
So you were trying to verify it through your own experience and then reposting it.
Exactly.
Okay.
From that point, funny enough, around that, I think about a couple months before that, I was actually planning on going into my business undergrad.
Okay.
So I was like, a business was always a part of my mind, but I thought doing a business undergrad would be the route to business. Then I started to realize, you know what, like,
not really.
yeah, I still, honestly, I still don't like, I didn't realize that until I got into business. But at that point, I switched over. I was like, you know what, I'll become a physiotherapist, because I loved movement. I loved learning about the body. So my parents, everyone around me thought, okay, he's going to become a physiotherapist.
Okay.
Because I was, they were very happy, very happy. To this day, my dad still asks me to, do you want to do your master's program? And I'm like, nope, I don't have the grades for it. I'd have to go back to school, then get my grades up, and then I'd have to spend 2 years of my time in a physiotherapy program. I'm going to lose out on too much money to do that. It's not worth it. But essentially at that point, I went to Guelph Humber, which was the local university. One of the reasons I didn't go somewhere far was because I wanted to do something. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Right? I was just like, I want to do something. I knew I had the Instagram going. Even York University was a little bit further from my house. I was like, I want something super local where I'm not spending too much time at school.
Okay.
Go in, go out, and then do something better with my time. So in a way, you can say that, like, I always knew that I wanted to do something.
But how?
But yeah, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah. So my parents always thought, again, physiotherapy. And then in my second year of university is when I wanted to open the gym.
Okay.
At that point, my dad was like, no, not happening. Right. And I was like, it doesn't matter. I'll open it. You know what I mean? Like I'll still open it. I was very like, it's going to happen. And I guess after about 2 to 3 weeks of me consistently saying I'm about to open a gym, he was, and like I had already started looking at leases and stuff. And then the day that I was going to sign the lease, I told him, I'm like, hey,
He gave in.
he didn't give in. He was like, okay, you know what? Because I was still young at that point. He's like, let me come with you to meet the guy that you're going to sign. Because I already was like, look, this
Makes
is where I'm
sense,
signing.
yeah.
My cousin was the realtor. I'm going to do this. Done.
Yeah.
I was just letting him know right before I did it one time. And then he was like, okay, you know what? Let me just come see the unit, you know? And yeah, that's essentially, he was like, okay, sure. He somewhat gave in, and he's always been a little bit into his health. Still sort of is, right? Again, in certain ways he's not, but that might have, you know, maybe been like, okay, you know what? At least you're helping people with your health. Because I think when he was a lot younger, he had some health stuff, you know, drinking, not eating healthy and stuff.
Okay.
Eventually lost a bunch of weight. So I think he probably noticed the importance of it himself. And even to this day, they like the business I'm in, right? But obviously, again, being a physiotherapist is going to be a higher prestige, right?
I know. I keep saying it in every podcast that my mom still feels somewhere that you cannot run a consulting business if you're not a CPA. And I keep telling her times have changed. There's a lot of information out there which you can grasp, which is for free. It depends upon your action than the degrees you have or the certifications you are having. But then again, I think it's not their fault. They've grown up in a different atmosphere than we have, and with much less exposure than we have. I think, thank God, we have so much exposure at an early age, which, if used in the right way, it can help you make the right decisions early on in life, right? But again, coming back to your story, it's getting interesting now because you said second year you knew that you want to sign a lease, and I want to know how. Like, are your parents from a business background? Did you have friends in school or in university who were from the business background? Because it's very similar to mine. I started my first business when I was 17, and I somehow knew I want to do this. And when people keep asking me, I personally kind of don't know. I'm like, I just knew this is the right thing and I want to take that risk. Was it an instinct for you as well, or were there any experiences in your childhood that led to this decision?
Yeah, I guess there's always things that make you want to start something, or if when you do start something, there's always going to be some sort of experiences that lead you to that.
Yeah.
I can name a few.
Okay.
One was, I think, one thing my dad would always mention growing up would be, like, he drove taxi. You know what I mean? Like, so we're not coming from the richest family. We're doing okay, you know, but and he was always like, you know what? I get to go to work when I want. I get to come home when I want. In between, he's like, there's no one that dictates my schedule. Yeah. So that was always, I guess, something in my head where it's like, yeah, I think deep down, and this is something he'd always mention, you know, he's like, he would always say, that's the one nice thing about my work was the freedom of time. It wasn't that he didn't work hard. He worked, you know, 20 hours at a time, right? Yeah. Took a nap in his car when he needed to, type of thing, right? So he did work hard in that sense. I think that's one experience. Another was my brother was always doing something, right? He's not someone that stuck to one business, right?
He's elder to you.
He's older, yeah. He's 4 years older than me.
Okay.
So he's done a little bit of everything, right? So it's always like, again, just seeing like, okay, you know what? He's always found a way to make money, right? Nothing illegal, you know, but you know, like he's always ran this business and then did that business, you know. As I've gotten older, I think there's like, I also look at him and I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
If you focus a little bit more on one business, you're going to be a little bit more successful, again, in my opinion. And I think he's starting to do that as well now, but that was something that I seen as well. At the same time, I also think I started to see a couple of people that were opening gyms, and my thing was, I can be a better coach, right? At that point. Now it's like, I'm not too concerned about that because I have so much knowledge in my back pocket that 90% that I don't use. So I just realized, like, you know, I don't need to be that great of a coach. I just need to be a better business owner at this point. And now I'm trying to, you know, get those skills. But yeah, I've seen people that were opening gyms, and I'm like, you know what, I can be a better coach than that, right?
Yeah.
At that point, you know, you're young, your
Yeah.
ego's fragile, so you're
Yeah.
like, you know what, I can do better than you, right? But at this point, it's like I, you know, everyone's doing great, and I want everyone to do great because the world of fitness is so. There's so many people that need it, even though you mentioned like a lot of people are aware of this, but nobody really takes action. Right? We're all aware of fitness and health, but I think we're in a worse place than we might have been, you know, 20, 30 years ago when there wasn't the same amount of media coverage of fitness, right? And then I this one conversation with somebody, he actually wanted me to train at his gym, and he was saying, don't worry too much about your followers, because if your followers don't pay you, what's the point, right? So that was a big transition as well. He was also a gym owner, and I was like, okay, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Like, but that's just a couple. There's probably people, like, again, I have friends around me that are like super driven and motivated. And I'd say I'm one of those people as well. That's also very driven and motivated, you know, like, the conversation I have with people is always like, okay, how are we going to do better personally and from a business standpoint? Thinking back to it as well, I had a good friend who's doing very well right now within the clothing business. So, you know, there's so many people around me. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's important. Sorry, I'm cutting you. It's really important that you have the right kind of people around you. Certainly, which is what I've realized in the past 6 years of coming here, because I'm new to the country. I'm relatively new versus you. You were born here, I guess, right? So 6 years. But then what I realized has helped me so far, and by God's grace, we're doing good, decent, is that you have to be with the right people. And when I say right people, I don't mean people who are rich, people who have resources, or I would say people who are privileged. I just mean to say that people who have an ambition or have a goal in life and they work towards it. As you said, action. And I think it's not just in working out. Whatever you do, or whatever you think to achieve, it's super important to act upon it. Not thinking what is the result of it, not thinking whether it's successful or not. How can you imagine or create situations on your own thinking this would not work if you haven't tried it? Right? So when you say you started with Instagram and then realized maybe followers is not the thing, but if you wouldn't have started that, you wouldn't have realized that this is something which is not something I want to focus on, but I want to focus on fitness.
Yeah.
You have to start somewhere. So when you went and told your dad and that he gave in a little bit, I think our parents also get to know our conviction. So I find this bullshit idea when people say my parents are not agreeing to it. I say that probably you are not convinced enough towards your goals. That's why you're not able to convince others.
Yeah.
So that is just an excuse. I might be wrong. I might be harsh. I might be blunt. But I just feel that's something. Do you agree to that?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, because like for him at that time, our rent was $1,400 a month. And for him and for me at that time, that was like, that's a lot of money. Right?
Yes, for sure.
Like I wasn't going to go ask him for the money.
Yeah.
Right. He was like, you know, that would,
Yeah.
worst case scenario, maybe he'll pay my rent for 1 month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, that's not an option. Right. So I had my options laid out. Okay, this doesn't work. I'm going to drive Uber. You know, right now I had that other job.
Yeah.
You know, I was working side to side. Right now that can cover approximately that much. Right. Even if I just have one client paying me $300-400 a month, I make $1,000 at the other place. You know, I can kind of balance things out, right? My goal wasn't to make money necessarily. It was like, how can I, because even now, like my goal is not, I need money right now. It's how can I build wealth, you know, in the future. And that's always been my mindset, because I don't have lavish, you know, lifestyle. I don't go crazy. Even now I'm a very minimalistic person, relaxed, right? No need to like excessively show what I do not have. You know what I mean? Or even if I have it, I don't want to just live at that point where I'm, you know, wearing the craziest clothes or wearing the, you know, crazy cars. I do enjoy cars, you know, and I do, you know, but it's like same thing at that point. It was like, I'm just trying to make ends meet. And, you know, when you tell somebody like, okay, if I don't make it work, I'll drive Uber, right? Like that's always an option. Like, you know, like I think it brings to their mind like, okay, there's conviction behind what this person is saying. And there's a plan, right? It's like, cool, I have this, and this is a plan. If it doesn't work, at least I have some sort of option to
and you can always go back to school and get a job. I mean,
I mean, I was in school. I did finish my degree.
Yes, yeah. So
barely, but I finished my degree.
that's I think that's always the case. But I was smiling when you were saying this because by God's grace, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs because of the work I do. Also now through the podcast, and also because of the community, right? You meet a lot of people who are starting on their own, and people. I've realized one thing, that sometimes you have to be emotional about your decisions than be practical, because you cannot always you would always back of your mind have done you must have done your calculations, like you did. I can do an Uber, but that was more of an emotional decision because you always knew you won't have to go there.
Yeah.
You had that confidence in you that I'll make it work. That was more important.
Yeah.
Like when I started my business, being a first gen immigrant, I was told by everybody, including my parents, what are you doing? You have a stable job. You're making good money. You got a permanent residency. You'll soon be a citizen. Just get into this job, get your first house, and then think about your business later. Like that's the trajectory. Have a family, right? And then I'm like, no, I don't know. But I said the same thing. I said, I can, so my car is pretty old, so I cannot do Uber. I can only do Uber Eats. So I said, I'll do Uber Eats. I'll do DoorDash. But I know I won't reach there because I will go in and work in a call center. But what if I don't want to think about the what ifs? I have the plans, but let's just get into it. And I think that's really important. And probably also because you were around those people. So were you at any point after paying that $1,400 second guessing, or you were always like, no, this will work out? Like after you signed the lease, now what?
Yeah, funny enough, like once I signed the lease, I started to get clients somehow. You know, I had 0 clients before that. I signed that lease without a single client. So, I signed, I think 2 or 3 clients, a couple $100 each, probably like $500-$600 each they were paying. So within my first few months, like we were at a positive, right? Again, when I say positive, making like $300-$400 a month, you know what I mean? So, funny enough, we were making some kind of money. And for the first whole year, we made money. I think the first month that I lost money, where I just wasn't signing new clients, was January of 2020, which is supposed to be the biggest month of the fitness space.
Okay.
Thinking back to it, it's just, again, just didn't have the skill set to make money. But there wasn't any, like, in my head, it's just like, I kind of forgot your question, but in my head, I was like, I'm just a savage and I'm going to make sure this works. You know what I mean? Like I grew up as an athlete, you know what I mean? So it's like, I didn't. So
you had those skills. Yeah.
It's just like, you know, like I'm going to kill it regardless. Even today, like I wake up, or any day that I wake up, I do like my sleep. So I'm not somebody that wakes up at 5 a.m. and says, oh, you know, I'm going to kill it today. I wake up at a normal time, right? Depending on if I have clients to get to in the morning, I might wake up at, 5:30, but wake up at a normal time. But once I get to work, I'm killing it. You know what I mean?
I can feel that.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but I can feel that. And once you're into entrepreneurship, and you've been into entrepreneurship for a while now, you can feel the other person's vibe, I feel. Like some people who walk in the office, and I know they will kill it.
Yeah.
Like somehow. And I was just sharing this with my mom. She was here 2 months ago, and she's like, how can you be so judgmental about people? I said, no, I just know that this person will kill it. And she's like, how? I said, I cannot tell you, but I can just feel it. The kind of energy you have, the kind of vibe you have. And when I met you for the first time, right, it felt like you knew what you're doing, right? So that's again something which comes with experience, but also comes with that hard to explain feeling.
Yeah, I think another thing is people just don't care to be good at what they do, right? So like, with my thing is, and I again, I can notice this in people as well, who's going to kill it and who's not.
Yeah.
Some people that make it, they really care to be really good at what they do. So when I was learning about fitness or movement or mechanics or injuries or anything related to fitness and health, like I learned a lot. You know what I mean? Like I can sit and have a very educated like maybe at this point there, again, some of those are very far in the back of my head. So I have to really reach, and some things I might not remember as great as I did when I was practicing it every single day. But like I became really freaking good at what I did, right? Most people don't care to do that. Now, again, I'm in the stage where sales and marketing is my thing that I want to learn about. And like, I learn about that every single day. Now at this point, I'm also more of leadership and things like that. Like I spend a lot of time just like all day. I don't get tired of it. I listen to it all day, you know?
Yeah.
My wife sometimes like, why are you constantly playing this stuff in the car? You know, always
Yeah.
like I listen to it. I don't read as much as I should, but you know, if I am reading, I will read about it constantly. It's just like this, like the desire is so high to get to this goal of like, I want to be the best at sales. I want to be the best at marketing. When it was training clients or like becoming a great trainer, I want to be the best trainer that you've ever met. You know, like there will be nobody better than me. And it's just like, without like, I also, you know, also don't care to compare to people, but there is like that sense of competitiveness of like, I want to be the best. Why are you going to do something if you don't want to be the best? You know, like why would you want to go, like if you run a business, right? Like you run your business, I run mine. As much as I don't believe, like I believe there's more than enough business to go around. At the same time, I believe I am the best. There's no reason that my clients would ever go to somebody else, right? And then at that point, it's like I'm doing an injustice to my clients by not selling and marketing them hard enough to have them in my product, right?
Because you know they'll benefit from you.
More than they would from the next guy down,
Yes.
right? Down the street.
Yes.
But at the same time, right, I don't care about them either, you know, because it's like, that's business. Like you do your business, I do my business,
Yeah.
but I'm going to create my business or whatever skill set that I have in whatever, like if it's somebody who's on our team that coaches with us, I want you to be the best coach possible. I'll provide you the resources I know, but you go ahead and learn way more, you know, become the best. Whether like, let's say a few years down the line, you decide to go do your own thing, you're going to be amazing at what you do. You know, you're going to learn so many skills. Don't just like, you know, I guess when people are young, like for example, when I was young and I got fired from that place, like I was good at what I did, but at the same time, there were certain things that I just didn't care to improve, right? Because I'm like, oh, what's the point, you know? Such as talking to people, right? But like now I know like talking to people is like the biggest skill that you can have, right?
Yeah.
Like we sat down when you came into the gym,
Yes.
we sat down for a consultation. We had a great conversation, right?
Yeah.
Anyone that comes in, unless they have like this massive barrier, my thing is to get rid of that barrier because I'm showing you I'm a real person, right? Regardless if you sign up or not, right? You and I are going to have a conversation about your health and at the same time about life, right? Because if you're coming in and we're talking about your health and your life, maybe there's something that I can, even if you walk away with like paying me $0, maybe you can walk away with like, oh,
Some
Irinder
learning.
told me this and I did this. And like, yeah, people just need to be better.
No, I think that's why we're sitting here today. Because I joined and then I briefly joined and then I had to leave due to some personal reasons, right? But that conversation had some weightage. That's why we are sitting here. Otherwise, it would have been fine if you're not doing this. But I always knew that I need to sit with you and talk about your business because when I met you for the first time, I could feel the same passion as I could feel right now.
Yeah.
Right? The first meeting and the way I went back to the car, got my credit card and I said, I'll pay right now.
Yeah.
There was something. It's not easy. I do sales too.
Yeah. Of
Right?
course.
So letting the client not go and making them sign up on the same day without giving any discounts, guys.
Yeah. No discounts.
No
discounts
discounts.
where we are.
So you really know your worth.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the end, we are not selling a product which is coming from China, putting our margin on it and selling it. We are selling our experience, our skill set, our knowledge, right? So you cannot ask people, I personally feel, and tell them, can you reduce it by $50? Because you are getting something which does not have a fixed value to it. How do I explain? I mean, I can charge 500 per hour or 1,000 per hour. It's my time which I'm giving you, right? Or my experience. It's not a product manufactured in a factory and you won't find another me. But for me to realize this and be that confident about myself is also very important, which I could see that day. And then I was like, because the podcast just recently started, I was like, no, I need to meet him and know how the journey has been. And now again, circling back, I want to ask you, you said when you signed the lease, you got clients, right? So do you believe that when you constantly think about something or think about achieving at a certain position, that happens? So in simple words, the term is manifestation. It's going on a lot these days. And do you practice it, or it is just from within that it happens, or you don't believe in it?
Yeah. So at that point, I was big on that. Now if you ask me, like, I still believe in it, but I don't actively, like, I do visualization practice. It's just part of my life, because like I said, if I'm thinking of going and killing it every single day. You
You
know,
have
like
to
you have to
visualize.
visualize what you're
Yes.
killing or what you're doing. Otherwise, it's you have to have a direction, right?
Yes.
Now, for me right now, my direction is not crystal clear.
Okay.
But I know which way, like the direction is crystal clear, but the end goal is not, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always the ability to
Fluctuate.
Yeah, like if I'm going north, right? I can always move left and continue north. You know what I mean? If I know my goal is a little bit that way.
Yeah.
You can change your trajectory a little bit over time, but it doesn't need to be exactly perfect. So yeah, at that time I was big on that. I used to like listen to a lot of people like Bob Proctor or like, I can't even think of half the people right now. The Science of Getting Rich is a big book that I read that
Okay.
a lot. I've read that book like 4 times. I don't read a lot, but I've read that one book like 4 times.
Okay.
And yeah, around that time I remember I had read it. It's just about your belief within that one substance, right? Whatever that means to you. And from that point, continuing forward and knowing that it's going to start meeting you in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
So I do believe in it. I don't constantly practice it, but I do. At that point, I was like heavy in it. Like, this is what's going to happen. And I was like, wow, like when I started getting clients, I was like, oh, this is the law of attraction. This is manifestation.
Yeah.
I'm vibrating on a certain frequency. And yeah, that's a big thing for sure.
And to just add to it, I know I'm adding to all your points because it feels so familiar, is that any person I've met who is doing good in their business at some point have been practicing it. Knowingly, unknowingly, it's a separate conversation. Sometimes you're just wired in a way that you're manifesting and you don't even realize this is manifestation. So for me, for the longest time, I didn't know this is manifestation until podcasts started coming in and people, you started saying, oh, this is manifestation. Like getting up every day and knowing this is what you will be doing.
Yeah.
Right? Crystal clear. I have to make $1,000 today. Right? Just randomly and knowing nothing. And then you coming to work with that ambition.
And I think, again, when we come back to like manifestation is huge, but just the skill set of also being able to speak, like a lot of people don't know how to communicate properly. Right. And that's your first impression of somebody obviously is how you look and how you communicate. Right. I'm not saying, you need to be the best looking person in the world, but just taking care of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Looking like presentable. Right. I show up in sweatpants and a t-shirt everywhere. That's just me. But at the same time, I try not to look rough.
I get it.
And at the same time, I also make sure I speak well. I don't speak with some kind of crazy slang but I also don't speak like super professional. I speak how
you
naturally would be, right?
Yeah.
And obviously in certain situations that changes depending on who you're with, but like just be yourself, and then people resonate with that, right? Like, again, like I don't wear a fancy watch. I don't wear like, that's just not me, that's just, maybe it is you, right? And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But like just not doing things that feel inauthentic to you, right? When I want a nice car, I'm going to purchase a nice car. You know, I don't drive a bad car, but, when I want a crazy house, I'm going to purchase a crazy, or like whatever it might be, right? Do that when it feels right to you rather than like, oh, I'm chasing this material. Like you'll never see me wearing like a flashy shirt, like, or flashy pants. Like that's just not me. Right. But yeah, presenting yourself in an authentic way, people read that and they're like, oh, you know what? I trust this person. Okay. You're going to like, same thing with my initial lease, right? When I told him I was 20 at that time, he was like, okay, like, you know what I mean? How are you going to pay me? Like, do you have clients? I said, no. And I was like, look, this is what I have. I have this social media. I have this, and this. This is how I'm going to do it. And this is my plan. And somehow he decided to allow me to sign a lease, right?
And you were not faking it. I think you were authentic. That's what you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. Just be authentic, right? Obviously have the belief and the manifestation part of it. But at the same time, you need skill sets as well, right? That's why, again, I'm not that I don't believe in manifestation, but if you're going to do no work, it's not going to go anywhere, right? You need skill sets. You need action, but you also need like hard skills, right? You need to learn, like, depending on what you're doing. If you're an athlete, you need endurance, you need strength, you need mobility, you need everything. You
have to hit the gym.
Yeah. At the same time, you need charisma. Like Conor McGregor made so much money because he was Conor McGregor, his personality, right? At the end of the day, he could have had all the athleticism and all that stuff, but if he didn't, talk crap in between interviews and stuff, he wouldn't have been him, right? And made the money he did. So whatever skill set you have and whatever dream you have, you need to realize it also has an action that it needs to be paired with. And that's when it meets you in the middle, right? Otherwise, it's just going to, like, without the action, the dream is just staying far away from you. And again, I'm not somebody like, my biggest struggle has always been like procrastination, right? I've always been somebody that thinks of, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this and this. But my biggest struggle has always been going ahead and taking that action, right? Not that I'm very effective with my actions though. You know what I mean? Like I know a lot of people, like, even in school, right? You got to study like, you know, so many hours to get a, you know, even a 70 on your test or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I would study like 4 or 5 hours.
Those
right?
are good genes.
Max. Yeah, maybe good genes, but also like just knowing how to cut nonsense out and just, you know, retain it, right? So it could be, yeah, like, you know, some sort of good genes where I have some sort of smarts in me. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also like, I think it's also a skill set, right? Because even in high school and school, like just learned how to do so much. Like you knew you needed, especially in high school and stuff, because you got to show your parents your grades and stuff. You know, you need certain grades, but at the same time, you don't put in the effort. So you figure out, how am I going to get that done? You know, you learn to read the summary of it and pick up the stuff that's important and filter out nonsense. Even now, like whatever it was, I think that that's a skill that in a weird way it benefited me, but then it has its own bad sides too, right? So I find that whenever I'm doing some sort of work, I tend to find the easy way to do it, but always find the most effective and the most efficient so that I get the best reward for my time. Right?
Yeah, that's what matters, getting the things done, not what's gone behind it, right? If you have to get it done, you have to get it done. If it takes 1 hour, good. If it takes 5 hours, you have to get it done. So, no, perfect. So, again, I want to go back and go slow again. So, to the lease, you signed the lease, you got your clients. And how long were you in that space?
Approximately 2 years. 2019, we signed it. And then 2021, we were trying to open by mid 2020, by like September of 2021, but with COVID at that time, there was a lot of slowdowns.
That was the second location.
That was moving into the bigger location. Then there was
there
was a lot of slowdowns, permits and construction and all of that stuff just kept slowing us down. And then that last lockdown, January of 2022, that slowed us down quite a bit. Funny enough, there was an interesting story as we were switching out on our last lease. Someone else came and signed a lease before we had left.
Okay.
So we had to luckily the guy was, I guess, kind enough in the sense that he let us share the space with him. But I guess he also went behind our back and signed a lease without us knowing. Right. So there was good and bad to it. Right.
Yeah.
So we were unsure for a bit if we were going to still stay in that space because we thought we were going to get kicked out. Right. And our lease still had our other space still had a few months until it was going to be done. So there was a little hardship. There's a lot of struggles for sure in between. Yeah. A lot of stories.
Experiences. I think that's important because if everything goes smooth, how would you know what success is?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
It has to go down. And that's what is something you shouldn't be scared of because it's part of the business you're doing, right? Okay. So when you got the lease, you were paying $1,400. What was there any other expenditure? Was it just you and your partners doing
old
it?
Space?
Yeah.
So in terms of paying for the lease, I was just myself covering the lease.
Okay.
We were trying to start a side business inside of that. So I was doing a lot of one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
We were trying to start boot camps.
Okay.
So 10 or more, 15 people, right? So large group training. And that we weren't any little bit of money that we're making from there. We were charging way too little to even survive, you know, if I think back to it. But yeah, that's essentially the expenses, I guess, you know, personal expenses, gas, maybe food. There was no real expenses that I had.
But did you purchase any
equipment when I purchased? Yeah, when I started. Gym equipment was a lot cheaper in 2019 than it is now.
Okay.
I think it was maybe, I can't remember off the top of my head, maybe $15,000.
Okay.
I think the equipment itself was probably $11,000, $12,000.
So that was all your own money?
So funny enough, it was essentially going to be I was going to invest it all, right?
Okay.
I had maybe saved, I don't remember again numbers, but around that amount. I knew I had the right amount to start the business with.
Okay.
So I signed the lease, paid for first and last month, and then at the end of it, my dad was I don't know, he just felt okay, you know what? Let me just help you a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you keep your money in case your rent doesn't. And then I think he gave me a few thousand. I think he paid for the equipment, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, I think all in, and I think that was maybe 11,000 was the bill for that. I know I paid first and last myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was random costs in between that I probably paid myself. So I don't remember the exact breakdown of how we
So roughly about $15,000
15
to start
max
the business.
17.
If someone wants to start something like this,
Oh, now no.
no.
Now
Okay,
no.
so must be more.
After COVID, again, it just depends, right? Depends on where you're trying to open.
Yeah.
And how resourceful you want to be, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
you can order some stuff from China and
Yeah.
get it a little bit cheaper. But yeah, like
Roughly around $20,000, depending upon if similar to what you did, and you did in Woodbridge, right?
yeah,
I don't think you would get a lease of $1,400 in Woodbridge anymore.
yeah, again, we had like a back alley. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So keep that in
yeah.
mind. Like there's a computer shop in the front.
Oh,
he has a
okay.
wall put throughout the thing. And then
Okay.
the back entrance is where our clients would enter.
Okay.
Where like half the time the snow removal wasn't that great. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like you hear of like even Soul Cycle, which is a big gym in the States. They started in something similar where it's just hard to find. So
And that's completely fine. I think you
Mhm.
have to make it work with the resources you have.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you have $50,000, you might
Mhm.
not be able to open the best gym.
Mhm.
So it's more about you starting at some point and
Yeah.
that giving you the confidence to go ahead, get
Yeah.
a bigger space, which it did in 2 years, which is
Yeah,
not bad.
exactly. I think
And with COVID.
Mhm.
So those were hardly 2 years.
exactly.
Right, so.
But keep in mind, like when we started the second one, it was like things were going up, and then COVID, and then business partner left, and though like at the end of the day, it was still my business. I was the one running it, so that's why I had to take leadership and be like, okay, I got to figure this out. But during that month of lockdown, this was the last lockdown that happened, and most trainers were still training clients. I chose not to train anybody because I knew that location had to be finished. That was just me. You know what I mean? I needed, and by the time I left, it was like, by the time we opened up again, I had 2 clients.
Okay.
Right. That was paying like we had probably a $15,000 bill to the builder.
Okay.
Remaining. Probably had like 10,000 left in the bank account.
So did you save something from the 10,000 left was from the first location?
Just whatever
the previous
savings
location?
we had, going on at
Okay.
that time. There was more, right? It just cost like opening this was probably over 100K. Opening this location.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you did not take any business loans.
We took about 50,000. Yeah.
And what kind of business loan was that?
Whatever was going at that time. Yeah, it was
Okay.
like a 4%.
Wow.
Yeah,
Still,
so-
it's not bad.
Yeah.
Right
so-
now, you won't get a 4%.
Yeah. So there was some sort of COVID type business loan going at that
Okay.
time. We didn't
that
qualify.
worked for
Yeah,
you.
we didn't qualify for the other one where you can pay 10%. It's like
Yeah,
and you
the
get you
small
don't.
business.
Yeah, we didn't qualify for that one where you got to keep some money out of it.
Yeah.
We just 10 years.
That was $60,000, I think. You
Something
can
like
keep
that.
it,
Yeah, we didn't qualify for that, unfortunately. But with this one, it was just we got a 50,000 loan, and then the other, I don't know how. Again, don't know the exact number, but it was a little over 100K probably to open this.
It was just you doing all this at that time.
Whatever business savings we had, and then obviously when there was a split between the business and whatever, a certain amount.
The decisions were all made by you.
in
Personally.
terms of
Like opening the next location, or was Puneet already with you by
Puneet
then?
wasn't, but there was a business partner before.
Okay, yeah, that you told, but you said you did.
That was by the time right after the first lockdown.
Okay.
That 2022 lockdown in
Okay.
January. It was like the last 2 or 3 days
Okay.
when it was before it was about to end.
Oh wow.
That's when they had left. So, at that point it was like, cool. We have this amount of left in our business, our business bank account. We have this much to pay the builder, which was like 16,000. We only had 10K in the account. Our rent was probably around 4K a month at that point.
Wow.
But I only had 2 clients, so that was like paying maybe $1,500 a month we were making.
But you knew you could do it. You will be able to do it.
It was a stressful period.
Yeah.
It was a stressful first 1-2 months. And that's when I realized training skills weren't going to cut it. There was way more that I needed to learn, right? Like at that point, I was a great trainer. Like if you asked me to whatever about the human body, I could fix it for you, but training skills were not enough to make money. So I just realized, cool, I got to do X, Y, and Z. I got to learn about sales, got to learn about marketing. Alex Hormozi was just getting big at that time, read his books. Again, just consumed his information constantly, and then realized, okay, there's more skills and different things that I need to learn. And again, he also was in the gym space. About a year later, like last year, signed up for like mentorship. You know what I mean? So just different skills over time that just needed.
So
to
you've
learn.
been a self-learner through resources which are available to everybody
Yes, at first.
at first. Yeah,
And then
then you signed up for the.
Yes, now I am a part of like a gym mastermind mentorship group.
Okay.
Which at the same time, I'm also, somebody that doesn't take the most advantage. Is that the right English? I don't take, I don't fully go into the resource and like go, okay, I can learn X, Y, and Z. I do spend a lot of my time I think I prefer doing something and then be like, okay, let me take a little bit from here, from the resource and then go ahead, right? I don't make the most use of it. Especially again, there's points where I do, right? Where it's like, cool, I'm fully focused. Especially, they do like quarterly stuff. Every quarter I'm fully focused on that 2-day thing that they do. But throughout the year, I don't book enough meetings and stuff like that.
But that's how you are, you said, right?
Yeah, like
cutting out those.
Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes I also read their stuff and I'm like, cool, this is great. And again, keep in mind, like when someone's more successful than you, they must be doing something right. You know what I mean? So it's not like you have nonsense. It's like you have a lot of great things.
Yeah.
But you know what? Maybe I just need this right now. Let me just try that, apply it to my business, and then I'll go try something else, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I do kind of try to filter, and that's just always been a skill that served me well. But yeah, so there's
what works for you might not work for someone else, and it's the same. What worked for me to get here might not be the same blueprint for someone else, but you can always take out bits and pieces from everyone's story, their journey, and then apply it to your own, right? That's what you are talking about. So filtering, so that's important.
Yeah, and anyone that's doing something well, like I think as I've gotten older, I like when I was younger, again, a lot of ego, a lot of like I'm better than you, but you just realize like there's people that have skills, and you just need to respect the fact that if someone's more successful, they have done something right.
Correct.
So you got to learn from them.
No
right?
doubt. Yes. Yes.
You have to have
sure.
that learner mindset.
Yeah, it's very easy to troll people when I keep saying, when someone's putting something out and they have 1 million followers and then there are trolls happening, and then I realize that with the podcast now even more how easy it is to comment on someone's post and how difficult it is to generate that content even if it's for 2 minutes, right? And if they've reached to a following, they're doing something right. Right. And that's for the business too. If they have been they've I'm not even saying success. If you survive the business for 10 years, 15 years, and I meet people, they've been in the business for 20 years in the same business, they're doing something right. Survival is also not easy, right? Everything keeps changing so fast. And as you mentioned, something which you can feel like the cost, and otherwise also, right? Probably the way you were teaching 5 years ago might be different than what you're doing right now because something has changed in the market.
Yeah.
So when you move to your new location, you start with 2 clients. How many clients do you have right now? And how has the journey been from moving to the new location till now?
So I had about 2 clients one-on-one, and then probably like 10 max. I want to say like 15. Actually, I think it was 18 clients that were doing boot camps at that point, paying like nothing. So boot camp, we're charging maybe I think $80 or $100, right?
Okay.
So yeah, something very, very little, right?
Okay.
So I don't even know if all of them unfroze their membership right away at that point. And then eventually we kind of merged the 2 and created a small group program last year. But a lot of ups and downs. So there's been fluctuation in terms of clients. I think on average in our first year, we're making like $7,000 a month, right? Something like that. Then year over year, we've been able to grow. Last year, I think we grew by like 62% from the first year. And then this year we've grown. So this is our 3rd year in this space. We've grown like 80-something% in revenue.
Which is about how much?
A decent amount to,
I can do the calculation.
Yeah, a couple 100,000, right? A few 100,000.
Which is good for the fitness space.
It's per location. Yeah. So our thing is like, keep in mind, like we're not, like the thing is we don't have capacity to make millions of dollars in one location, right?
Yeah.
But when we have multiple, right, we can get to that point. But it's about the first location is the hardest, right? Because there's so many systems. Like the fitness industry is like, if somebody asked me, hey, I want to start a gym, I'd say probably don't. There's so many better things that you can do, right? But I'm so far into it that like one, me and my wife, we both enjoy it, right? Like I would, like one thing is like you need to understand your fulfillment standpoint, right? And also understand your relationship fulfillment standpoint. Like she enjoys it, she loves it, she enjoys, like actually wants to continue with this business, and so do I, right? I love learning new skills and stuff. But yeah, once you learn systems, and you start building those systems, that's the hardest part. Once you start to build those, that's when you're going to start to do better, right? Because the next location, I don't need to rebuild the system.
You have to copy paste.
Yeah, right. I know what's going to work. Maybe the market might be a little bit different, right? Or the population might be a little bit different. Learn how to speak to them a little differently. But other than that, it's a lot easier, right? From 1 to 2, it's going to take us 3 to 4 years, right? Probably 4.5 years. Ideally in a year and a half, fingers crossed, right? Manifest,
Yeah.
we can open another one, right?
Yeah.
But from that point, it probably only take us a year, maybe a year and a half to open another one, right?
Yeah, no, makes sense.
Or less, right? And then from that point forward, the time's just going to get shorter and shorter, especially if I keep learning the skills. My wife keeps learning the skills to, make sure we can manage and run that, right? But right now, to answer your question, we're hovering around about 50-ish members, just under 50 members.
Okay.
But again, there's a lot of mistakes that we made around the wedding time from a business standpoint, just because we had such a big, which was around mid-year this year, because we started this year at about 32 members.
Okay.
Because last year we had a massive dropout at the end of the year. So we had something we learned is we can't do that. And this year we kind of did fix that.
Okay.
We got all the way up to about 80 members, which we were doing great, right? Financially, we were like, to keep in mind, we can only put about 120, max 140 people in our space, right? Okay. So we were almost at capacity. So we got up to that number. And then from that point, we're growing by 10 members month over month, approximately, net positive, not just, gross, because people leave as well. Attrition's there. And then in June, I think I started to get, I went on a trip, and then I got LASIK, and then like the wedding planning.
You got married.
And then I got, the wedding planning.
Which was important.
And then the marriage. And then after that, went to my wife's brother's wedding in Spain, and then went to a friend's wedding in India. And like, it just became like, those were all back to back, right?
Yeah.
So by the time we got back, it was September, and I was just I was actually drained. It took me about a month to really get out of that fully. And I would say now we're picking back up this year. Like, now the end of the year, my goal is just to kind of inflate our numbers, quote unquote, right? A little bit. The way that we're sort of doing that is selling a little bit more paid in fulls, which is going to push me next year harder to get out, because I like my reoccurring revenue to be high, because you can predict, right? But we're doing quite a few paid in fulls just to kind of get to that. Because if we continued at the pace that we were, right, from June onwards, we would have crushed our goal revenue number, right? Right now, we're just shy of it, and we're going to end just shy of it. But at the same time, I'm just getting as close to it as we can. Our goal was to get about 100% revenue growth, but we're going to end off with like 80, 85.
Which is
amazing.
Crazy. I mean,
for a business,
I think you reached 82, 80, 85 because you had 100% as the target.
Exactly.
So it's important to set targets which seem unrealistic, and then you go as close as possible. That's what I've learned in business so far. Because if you keep the target at what you think you would easily achieve, you might not even be able to go there.
Yeah.
So if my target is $1 million, I would eventually end up at least to 60-70% of it.
Exactly.
Again, it's about putting yourself in that situation. Because if your target is $1 million, you would start spending accordingly.
Yeah.
You're like, get me more people. Get me a better space.
You work backwards, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you're like, now I have no choice.
Yeah.
I can't go back.
Yeah. And that was like us when we got put into this position at the business. Like 2022 was super stressful. So we were just like, look, are we going to make it? Are we not going to make it? Right. We wanted to quit so many times last year, even 2023, we wanted to quit so many times.
Yeah.
The amount of times I thought about like different business ideas, but I was like, I'm just going to commit. I don't want to quit, when you start something. But this year is like, okay, like there's light at the end of the tunnel. We can fill this location out by next year. And the mistakes we made was not having a sales team, not having people in place to continue to grow the business. Because when the wedding stuff was going on, the business was running itself. It just wasn't growing. It was declining in the sense of we were losing clients. And then this time around, what are we going to do? Because we have a couple trips planned for next year. But I want to use those trips as our testing period, right? Is the business going to run itself next year, right? When we are close to capacity, can it reach capacity maybe even while we're gone? And if that's the case, then that tells us we're ready to open another one. And I think that's a great test for anybody, right? If like, hey, I want to open multiple of, especially if you're brick and mortar, right?
Yeah.
If you want to open multiple, first off, your revenue and your numbers need to be healthy. Your leadership needs to be good. And then you need to be like, hey, look, I'm ready to open up the second location now, right? Because it's running itself.
And it has to be month over month.
Exactly.
It has to be consistent because that's exactly what I feel. When I'm here, like I go to India once every year because my family is there. But I always feel the business gets stagnant.
Yep.
And even just me walking in the office gets me client. And that's strange because I'm like, I'm not doing anything extra. I was working from home in India too. But something happens that, remember you said that I got an office and there were clients. So I feel like as soon as today also, just before the meeting, we got a client. And that nothing was planned. They called me in the morning and I had no plans to come to the office. I said, okay, I'm coming for the podcast, and then there's a client. So I just don't understand, how does this work? Is it some energy? Do I attract clients? But if I'm here, the business runs in a different way. My team runs in a different way when I'm in the office. I don't know how. Yeah. When I'm not here, physically also, something happens.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing anything extra. So which is strange. And I don't know the answer. Like,
I mean, the way that I look at it is there's the shortcoming of any business is whatever the business owner is lacking, right?
Yeah.
Wherever your skill set lacks is where your business is going to lack. So there could be a leadership issue, right? Where you have certain skills in terms of leadership that you just haven't, sharpened your knives as of yet, right? Possibly.
But that's a very good way to look at it. I've never thought about it from that way, that why does this not happen? I just feel like I'm lucky.
Yeah, possibly. Like, so this is why earlier I told you, like, I believe in manifestation, but I'm a mix between, I believe in spiritual powers and I'm a big believer in that side, but at the same time, I'm very logical, right? I'm a very like, okay, cool. What can I do that's outside of my power? Like, spiritual stuff is completely outside of my power, but what can I physically do, right?
So it just adds on.
That's going to make sure that actually happens, right? Because you can't always just assume that the world's going to have it great for you, right? Because a lot of us have crappy situations. But at the same time, what are you doing to make that happen? You got to visualize, you got to know your direction. But yeah, I just see, like, for me right now, leadership, the reason I'm mentioning that to you, maybe that might be something that you need to work on, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with me. It's just like, leadership is my biggest weakness at the moment, because I've never been like I feel like I have the attributes, but I've never formally been in charge of something where I have a team, right? I don't consider my wife, we run it 50-50, even though we have completely different roles. So I don't consider that to be leadership per se. But anyone else that's an add-on from that point forward, now it becomes more of a team, right? In certain ways, she has to lead me, and in certain ways I have to lead her in terms of my wife, but in terms of the business side of things. But at the same time, anyone else that gets added on, there's leadership things that we need to take care of and learn to address in the right manner, right? Because you can't just be like, oh, you suck, you don't get clients. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be, there's a right and wrong way to do everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so Irinder, it was amazing. I didn't even realize that it's been more than an hour already. And there's so much more. I keep repeating this in every podcast of mine that we might have to do another one with you, because there was so many aspects of the business which we did not cover yet. On how Puneet joined and how is it going now, what the future looks like. I do usually ask a question: what are your 3 tips of which you would want to tell the audience when starting a business? But I think you've given quite a few. So we will leave that question for now. And also the last question we ask is how much you're making, which also you've kind of told our audience. So I think we're good with that. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and we will hopefully do another episode and get deeper into the business and what the future looks like for Perspective Studios.
Awesome, man.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.